is about 1.5 million Palestinians, including, as UNICEF said, 600,000 children who are already malnourished because of the siege imposed by Israel, because of the lack of sufficient humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. And by the way, Rafah is where all of these aid trucks are coming through. There is a ground assault on Rafah. Where exactly is that aid supposed to come through?
Well, an awful lot to put there to Nour Odeh, our next guest who joins us now, former spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority and now a Middle East analyst. A very good morning to you, Nour.
Good morning to you.
Well, let's, as I say, there's an awful lot to put to you what Eylon Levy was saying there, speaking for Israel's Prime Minister. First and foremost, the attack on Rafah, it seems to have already started. Now, Israel saying there that they have destroyed 18 out of 24 Hamas battalions and 4 remain in Rafah, and they're therefore determined to root them out.
Well, this has been the story since the beginning of this war, where we've seen more than 13,000 children killed. And we've seen time and again Israeli officials make false claims that have been thoroughly debunked, including the fact that there are safe or deconfliction zones. It can't possibly be true that the only ones telling the truth are the Israeli officials, while all UN agencies, all humanitarian agencies have repeatedly said time and again that there are no places that are safe for civilians in Gaza, that all the areas, even those that have been pinpointed and geolocated and given to Israel as sheltering civilians, have been targeted. And so, this is a nightmare scenario already in the middle of an epic catastrophe that we haven't seen in modern times. The level of not just the human toll, the starvation, the destruction, the systemic destruction of the health sector, all of that brings into sharp focus what kind of toll an assault on Rafah would have. And we're seeing it today.
Sorry to interrupt, but just
are being transferred elsewhere.
I'm just trying to check some of the factual points there as well. Is it your understanding that there are still several thousand, I guess it amounts to, Hamas fighters now in Rafah, 4 battalions, mixed in, as you say, there, with this substantial civilian population, over 1 million people, which just kind of illustrates the awfulness of this situation?
Well, I cannot really verify that information. It is not public. The only people talking about 4 battalions are the Israelis. So I really have no information to give on that issue. But as you said, there is about 1.5 million Palestinians, including, as UNICEF said, 600,000 children who are already malnourished because of the siege imposed by Israel, because of the lack of sufficient humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. And by the way, Rafah is where all of these aid trucks are coming through. There is a ground assault on Rafah. Where exactly is that aid supposed to come through? How will the population in Gaza be fed? How will it be able to access any kind of health services if the hospitals aren't supplied with medicine? They're already on their knees, the hospitals. A ground offensive on Rafah would make any entry of aid impossible.
But just that issue of aid, Nour Odeh, Eylon Levy said that Israel is placing no restrictions on humanitarian aid. They want as much as possible to get through in terms of food, water and shelter, but that up to 60% of it is being stolen by Hamas.
Well, like I said, it cannot be that the only people telling the truth are Israeli official spokespeople, while all UN officials are talking about restrictions that make absolutely no sense.
But does it all get to the civilian population?
Well, the people receiving the aid, the agencies receiving the aid are humanitarian agencies that are trusted by countries around the world to provide assistance. So I fail to understand why in this particular case there should be doubt about that. Is there a problem with keeping peace and security? Of course there is. This is a war zone, a conflict zone where people are hungry, where hungry people are trying to get to trucks and get the assistance they need because they haven't had a meal in a day or two. But we have heard from all of these agencies, which operate around the world, not just in Gaza, and they are talking about absolutely nonsensical restrictions, including, for example, on oxygen canisters, on pediatric insulin pens, on things that are needed for life-saving treatment of the civilians, not just those who are injured, but those who are critically ill or chronically ill. We know that the
Okay.
blood pressure regulation medication, heart medication, all of that
Okay.
is in short supply. People are dying because they can't get insulin in Gaza, and that's not
Okay.
because it's getting stolen.
I'm so sorry, we are nearly out of time, but I just have to ask you this again. Another point made there by the Israeli Prime Minister's spokesperson about there are safe areas to the south of Rafah still to go to. I thought most of these people had already fled, or many of them had already fled from the north. They've run out of road.
They have. They have. Israel has pushed the majority of the population through bombardment, through warnings and orders to Rafah. There is nowhere for them to go. There is the sea and there is Egypt, which will not receive them because it is not willing to be responsible for the expulsion of Palestinians who will likely not be able to return, judging by previous Palestinian experience. Right now, the Palestinians are being told you can move back north to Khan Yunis, where they're still fighting, or maybe to Deir el-Balah, where just a few moments ago there were 15 people killed in an Israeli airstrike, or al-Nusayrat, also south of al-Wadi, which is also under bombardment. And again, it's very important to point out that all of those areas depend on the aid, the trickle of aid that comes through Rafah. If Rafah is invaded, how will they get aid? That is a question that Israel needs to answer because they control all the crossings. They will decide if people will starve to death or not.